Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December OCM, the last OCM for the Ordinary Council meeting, for the year. I'll begin by acknowledging the continuing connection of Aboriginal people to country, culture and community, including traditional custodians of this land, the Wadandi and Kaniang people of the Noongar Nation, paying respects to elders past and present. I declare this meeting open at 5 p.m. And welcome to the public gallery, as well as those attending via live stream. This meeting is being live streamed and digitally recorded in accordance with Council Policy EMCP 2. Members of the public are reminded that no other audio or visual recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed without the permission of the chairperson. Every endeavour is being made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, but loud noises or comments may be picked up in the recording. Councillors, as we will do at each meeting now, will move a motion to suspend clause 8.2, which requires members to rise, according to Meeting Procedures Local Law 2017. Would councillors like to move that motion? Councillor Shand? Councillor Patrick? And all in favour? Carried. Item 2, attendance. We have myself, Vivian McCarthy, Councillor Gubler, Councillor Patrick, Councillor Glover, Councillor Lindeman, Councillor Shand, Councillor Davey and Councillor Mitchell. Staff present is CEO Nick O'Connor, Acting Director of Finance and Corporate Lauren Clifford, Administration Officer Samantha Farquhar, Director of Operations Ross Marshall and Manager Development Services Michelle Dennis. At item 2.1 we have an apology from Councillor Bailey, and at item 2.2 approved leave of absence we have none, and at item 2.3 Councillor John Bailey has requested a leave of absence for December, and provided that's approved by Council, we'll take him off the apologies. Would someone like to move the motion for Councillor Bailey to have requested leave? Councillor Glover and Councillor Shand. All in favour? Carried. At item 3, we have announcements from the presiding member. There are 4 tonight. The VC Mitchell Park Precinct Business Plan, Draft Licences and Management Model are available for viewing on the Shire's website and may be inspected and obtained from the Shire's Administration Office during business hours. Submissions are invited and may be made to the Chief Executive Officer, Shire of Donnybrook Balingup, via any of the following methods. Online, please use the Contact Us form on the page linked, the first page you get to in the Shire website, or by email to shire@donnybrook.wa.gov.au, or they can be mailed by snail mail at PO Box 94, Donnybrook, WA 6239, or you can make your submissions in person at 1 Bentley Street, Donnybrook, WA 6239. During the hours of Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4 p.m. Submissions close at 4:30 p.m. on the 17th of January 2025. The second announcement is that the Lions Club Christmas Carols by Candlelight will be held on the 21st of December from 4:30 to 9 p.m. at the Amphitheatre down at the river. Also on the 21st at 10:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the All Saints Anglican Church is an interactive Christmas play and activity for young people, and there will be cakes and free sausage sizzle. And finally, the Australia Day breakfast will be held in Ayers Garden on the 26th of January from 9 till 11. There will be lots of community activities and an Australia Day barbecue provided by the Lions Club.
Yes. So apologies, Shire President. I believe there may be a change of venues on foot in regards to the Australia Day ceremony, and I think staff might be assessing the applicability of VC Mitchell Park and the new conference room there. But we're happy to have a conversation and confirm that and update the website accordingly.
Lovely. No, that's great. Okay. Item 4, declarations of interest. Division 6, Subdivision 1 of the Local Government Act 1995 states that care should be taken by all councillors to ensure that a financial or impartiality interest is declared and that they refrain from voting on any matter which is considered to come within the ambit of the Act. Councillor Gubler has declared a financial interest regarding item 9.1.2 as he transports guests to and from Lingalonga. And CEO Nick O'Connor declared a financial interest regarding item 9.2.7 as the item relates to his employment contract.
Probably through you, Chair, just to add to Councillor Gubler's declaration of interest, I understand he's also planning to step out for the petition, which the applicant for that relevant item will be delivering. Yep, 9.1.2. So I understand.
So when we have the presentation, deputation rather, you'll be popping out for that as well. And for that, we've put a nice chair out there for you, Pete.
In the cool.
In the cool shade. Item 5, public question time. Responses to previous public questions that were taken on notice, we have none. And item 5.2, do we have any questions from the gallery? No. Item 6, presentations. At 6.1, we have no petitions, but at 6.2, we have presentations. And Roscoe's... All right, we might move on to item 6.4 and loop back to, is that all right with you, CEO?
Yeah.
Oh, no, here he is.
Quick as a flash.
Item 6.3, presentations. Roscoe, would you like to present? I won't even say what it is, I'll let you.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. Hence why I just dashed out of chambers, because I left this sitting on my desk. But I'll catch my breath. What I'd like to do is present Council with an award that's been given to the Shire, which is a Volunteer Employer Recognition Award. It's from the state, in particular DFIS. We were nominated as a volunteer employer by Jess Cooper, as CESM, and awarded this recognition award at the recent sort of state awards ceremony that unfortunately we weren't able to attend. The award highlights the ongoing support and generosity provided by volunteer employers. There are over 26,000 emergency services volunteers who assist DFIS in the preparation, response and recovery of emergency situations. DFIS relies on volunteers to help the community, keep the community safe. However, many volunteers would not be able to perform their critical role without the support of their employers, which the Shire has recognised as outstanding. So,
wow.
On behalf of DFIS, I'm going to hand over this award to the Shire.
Well done to the executive team.
I should go to the CEO.
Yes, I think so. Yep.
It's heavy and it looks.
Well done. It is quite heavy, isn't it? Well done. What a great way to start the meeting. And now we'll move on to 6.3, deputations. And Paul Eaton will present regarding item 9.1.2, which is a development application P24052, additional tourist uses for the reception centre, camping area and events at Lingalonga Estate. Following the deputation, we'll open up the floor to councillor questions.
Good evening, Madam President. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak. Shire CEO, thank you for accepting my application to talk. I just want to begin tonight by thanking a couple of the Shire workers. Two of them are here, Ross Marshall and Michelle Dennis, but also Jared Ramsden and Cecilia Mullen. They've been absolutely fantastic working me through a process. We got ourselves into a bit of a bind and they've been amazing with their help and their insight and everything else. We're a small family business. We have 6 full-time staff. We have 6 part-time staff currently at the moment. We're committed to working with the Shire and our neighbours to find solutions that benefit everyone. We value our community, and we want to ensure that our events bring positive outcomes to local businesses while minimising disruptions to our neighbours. With the current Shire staff, we have been working, we believe, very productively and effectively to find workable solutions and moving forward from where we were. This application process has not been without its challenges, and I will openly admit that I am responsible for some of the mistakes along the way. However, the Shire have also been, and some previous employees might have been, contributed to the frustrations and the miscommunications that we have faced and where we got ourselves into. Just as an example, we were informed that a toilet block that was behind our marquee was not approved and we could no longer use it. This was confusing as I had applied for the licence to build it back in 2019. At the time, it was arranged with the Shire's health officer to come and inspect it, which is a normal process. Once you build it, they come and inspect the open leach drains to make sure everything's okay. She came and inspected them and told the plumber to fill them in. It was all good. But unfortunately, from what I realised afterwards, they resigned not that long after. The paperwork wasn't filled out. We didn't get an approval. I thought it was approved. I just went on my merry way using it, and that was wrong. I should have followed it up, but even the latest one, it took 3 months to get the approval, and you forget about it by then, and you just presume because they've been there and inspected it that it's all good to go. Just an example. This year's been by far our busiest, and it's not normal for us to have wanted to have been that busy, and if I can put it that way. We're just finishing off the last of our COVID rebookings, to rescheduling some of our events. So normally we wouldn't quite be as busy as what we have been this year. The application is not to try and be any busier than what we've been. The application is to be approval for what we're actually been doing. We plan well in advance for our major events and actively encourage patrons to use Five Gates Road. And anyone that knows it, so Five Gate Road comes in from Marrinup Ford. It's 6 kilometres, or roughly 6 kilometres into our place. If you're using Southampton Road, there's about 13 kilometres of gravel at the moment. Our 3 biggest events of the year are the Wild Camp Out, which is New Year's Eve, WA Gravity Enduro, which is a mountain bike race. There's about 500 riders, about 1,000 people on site, and True Grit, which True Grit this year was the biggest True Grit of Australia. 3,500 competitors, probably 5,000 people. Massive event it was. Events at Lingalonga have a significant impact on the local businesses, and I didn't mention Peter because I thought he might be here, but I could mention him now. Obviously, we use Royal Gala a fair bit, so that's why he's walked out. I was chatting to staff from the Mushroom Bakery a while ago, and she asked me what I thought was the busiest day of their year, and I said, well, the Medieval Carnival or the Small Farm Field Day. And she said, no, the day before a big event at Lingalonga, or the day when an event is finishing at Lingalonga. You have to tell us when you've got your events on, so we staff and etc. going on from that. A quote from the Barlingup General Store: Lingalonga events greatly improve our turnover to allow us to stock a larger range of products and fresh produce due to the increased turnover of products going out of their shop. So it benefits the local people because they've got more products and it's fresher. We buy locally and we encourage our guests to do the same, from catering companies through to charter companies, shops, small businesses. They all benefit from the events at Lingalonga, and really we're so isolated, the real issue just really is the road and dust, from what I can see. Even with this year being our busiest, I'd just like to talk about Southampton Road really quickly if I can. Between May and September this year, we had fewer than 200 people come to visit Lingalonga over those 5 months. 60% of those vehicles, by my calculations, use Five Gates Road. We tell everyone to use Five Gates Road because it's a shorter distance of gravel, and we believe that that's safer because the city folk are spending less time on a gravel road. So if they use that road, and there's really no neighbours. There's one neighbour there, Peppy, who we get along really well with. We get along with nearly all the neighbours really well, but obviously it does impact them. So if there's only one neighbour to impact, that's the way we send them. In 2020 and 2021, when we were under COVID restrictions, Southampton Road still had potholes in it that were really undrivable. My wife's car got the holes in the sump twice from potholes in Southampton Road, and we had no events on. It was nothing to do with us, is my point. So it's not a new issue on Southampton Road. I really understand the frustrations of the residents if they've lived in a place for years and something changes. But in this case, the Donnybrook Firebrook Chief, Max and Beth Walker, Melon, Trish Crombie, Jeff Power from Southampton are all very positive towards us. They're the ones that live on Southampton Road. There is an objection from Southampton Road and in the paperwork there, and I just would like to tell them that we're not asking for more events. They're saying we don't want any more events. We're not asking for more events. We're just simply trying to get the events that we have got under a different licence. Is that right? We have taken feedback seriously and are open to implementing measures to lessen the impacts of our events. Jeff Power from Southampton noted that when FPC recently put blue metal and road base down, it initially seemed to only just be ineffective because the colour of the dust hitting his house was now blue instead of brown. Once the FPC started to water that blue metal in, he said it was life-changing because it does bed in and it did stop the dust going down to his house. One of my suggestions would be, I have a ROPS truck, like a proper truck with lights and all of that, a water truck. I could go up and water that road between those two houses before a big event, and obviously do it well before so the water bed's in, and we reduce the dust issues basically entirely by doing that. We advise guests to use, including wedding attendees, as I said, to use Marrinup Ford. I could work with the Shire on actually forcing people to do that. On some of the big events like the Wild Camp Out and True Grit, they put signs up and stuff, but the Wild actually forced people to come through Marrinup Ford because they want people to come one way because it makes it safer. At True Grit, we have to use Southampton Road a little bit because everyone's got to come through Marrinup Ford, but then up until 12 o'clock in the day when virtually no one has left, they have to leave via Southampton, so you've got everyone going in one way. After 12 o'clock, when everyone is actually on site, we close it back up the other way and send everyone back out Marrinup Ford Road again. So there's about an hour's there when they will go the other way, but normally they will come in and out, all going one way, only on Marrinup Ford Road. Some of the traffic numbers that was in one of the objections there are just a little bit wrong. True Grit would have numbers of 500. That is the only event that would get anywhere near that for as far as cars, and there's no way that many went down Southampton Road. It was probably more like 150. Speeding of vehicles, this is just an idea. Peppy Gray from Five Gates Road, which is just out of Marrinup Ford, she rang me after True Grit. There's a lot of cars coming through. I went and spoke with her. She said the problem really is just the speed of people. Can we do anything about the speed? And I said, I don't know. I went and sent a sergeant from the police station here. He suggested that maybe if the traffic management people either put a temporary sign up reducing the speed for the day so that there's an event ahead, or the Shire somehow or other can reduce the speed on that road. They can come and put a speed gun there, and it soon echoes around pretty quickly that if the speed is reduced and there's police there, that might reduce people's speed on the road. Just another suggestion is from Tony Pratico. He's the ice cream truck driver from Bridgetown, a former Shire president of Bridgetown, I believe. He suggests that there is federal funding and grants available because he comes out in his ice cream truck and it's quite rough sometimes. When an attraction is in one Shire, but the main road coming in is in another Shire. And he believes that there's funding and stuff available that the Shires together collectively could look at to try and get a road federally funded via that. Something like it's just an idea.
Mr Eaton, there's just less than a minute to go.
Yep. In conclusion, I just want to thank you for your time. I'm very happy to work with the Shire and about our big events and stuff, and I just would like to just say thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr Eaton, and thank you for covering that area of concern, which is clearly the area that's been raised in the report.
Yep.
Now, if you just wait, Mr Eaton, we might have some questions from councillors.
Yep.
Councillor Davies.
Thanks for that, Paul. So when I was having a look through the bushfire information, I saw the letter from DFS, and there were quite a few items where they said, look, this is not ideal, but we'll defer to the decision maker, make sure that they're satisfied. But there was one in particular about the vulnerable tourism land use intent, just stating that it does not comply because I think it was no safe place to shelter.
Yep.
Can you talk more about what your response has been to that?
Yep. So the Donnybrook fire chief had our fire plan. Working with him initially, our fire plan has always been that the shelter would be on our lawn area in front of our marquee. There's a massive lawn area right next to a lake. No one can actually get burnt there. You might get ash or something, but you're actually going to be safe there. Their initially thing was that they said, what happens if he lets the grass grow really long and it's dead and that becomes a fire hazard? Well, I'm a wedding venue and no one's going to book me if I've got long dead grass in front of their marquee, was the response from the people doing the fire report, and so they thought that was not a valid.
Thank you. Councillors, any more questions? Councillor Glover. Councillor
Thanks,
Lindemann.
through the chair. Just wanted to ask, you may have stayed in there, but how long have you been in business for? Why did you choose that area? And the number of events that you highlight in regards to the downhill mountain bike events?
Yep. So we've owned the property for 12 years, nearly 13 years. We started mountain bike events in 2015. We currently have about 12 mountain bike events a year.
Thank you.
And so the last was just that you chose that particular property for the reasons of having the slope for downhill, or?
Yeah, sorry. When it was advertised as steep, rugged country and oceans of water. And my young son at the time found that, and we were into mountain biking, and we went there and we used to just build tracks and build them for ourselves until someone suggested we have a wage race there, and that's what we did.
Thanks, Councillor Lindemann. Councillor Glover.
Thank you for the deputation, and thank you for wanting to bring business to our shire, because I think that people like you are very valuable to have. My question is in regard to the traffic management that you were generally speaking about, and also connected to the water truck too, because I made some inquiries around the road that leads to your property.
Yep.
And yes, one of the ones was around the water truck and actually using water to settle dust as being perhaps more effective than grading the road over and over, which is what one of our proposals were. So did you say that you had access to a water truck?
Yeah, I have a truck that's ROPS approved. It's got the rollover bars and all of that stuff. It can be contracted out to main roads. That's where I bought it from originally. It's an 8,000 litre water truck. It's got flashing lights. I can drive up the road and put water on a road. I do it to Pepe's place on Five Gates Road before a big event. And I could easily go up to Jeff Powell's and Tim and Mary Larkin's place, basically just those two houses on Southampton Road, which have now got the blue metal in front of it, and that is a lot easier for the water to get in and hold the water there over the day.
Yeah, the shale is a really good idea. So yeah, it is good, and it is about that water and settling the dust, so that's a fantastic thing. And in regard to traffic management then, would you be prepared to put traffic management in place for that as well, do a plan around those big events and make that occur?
Yeah, thank you. They have to have a traffic management plan for True Grit because of the size of the event. So that has to get the licence from the Shire, they have to have an approved traffic management plan. And I've previously had a fair bit to do with that because I've obviously lived there, so I talk about what I think would work best. And that's why we've always brought people in through Marrinup Ford and then sent them out Southampton until we know no one else is coming in, and then we send them back out Marrinup Ford. So you've never got traffic going both ways.
Thank you, Mr Eden. Any other questions? Thanks, Mr Eden. Well done. Would someone like to get Mr Goobler back in? Councillor Goobler? Oh, has he? Great, okay. Might have gone to sleep in that chair.
Too comfortable.
Yeah, he can't. And Councillor Goobler's back in the room. Moving on to item 6.4, delegates' reports. We have two this evening. I'll go first. I attended on the 5th and 6th of November the inaugural conference called the IF Conference. I'll just get up my notes. It was the first time that the South West Development Corporation has held the Innovative Industries of the Future conference, and with a theme, this for the inaugural conference the theme was opportunities and challenges on the road to net zero. And the conference was opened by Don Punch, Honourable Member Don Punch, and his opening followed a huge agenda. And the first item of interest to councillors, this report has been distributed to all councillors and executive, but the first item is of interest to councillors in our role as employers and also to the executive. And if you wanted to find more information on that, it was a presentation by Ben Hamer, who is a futurist and captured some amazing statistics and gave us, as employers, top tips for 2025, especially noting Gen Z, who make up 25% of our workforce now. I think the baby boomers are a forgotten past. The next item of interest to councillors and executive was a presentation by Catherine de Fontenay, Commissioner of the Productivity Commission. She presented a view of Australia's global competitiveness in low-carbon circular economy. And then there was a very interesting plenary by Warren Pearce, CEO of the Association of Mining and Exploration Companies. There was so much in that presentation that I felt worried about, but it was a good one for us to discuss as a councillor group, and particularly focusing on his opinions of the Southwest and how mining would evolve in the Southwest. Following that, there was a panel discussion on how large-scale government support for critical minerals will attract further investment and benefit companies in adding value to Australia's natural resources. There was particular discussion about battery manufacturing and how graphite mining there's an absence of that in Australia, yet graphite is apparently in batteries, they've got much more graphite content than lithium. There was another plenary that was just a showcase for fully hydrogen-powered electric aircraft. And then another panel discussion on comparing similarities between Gippsland and Collie. Both are replacing coal-fired power with renewable energy, and touched on the advantages for regional areas close to those power transformations. A particularly interesting panel discussion followed for me. It was the First Nations involvement, ownership and equity in clean energy projects. There was showcasing of the Yindjibarndi and Mirawang Gadjarung projects, apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly, where traditional owners are leading two projects as shareholders and not merely stakeholders. This was followed by a candid discussion about the emerging nature of engagement with traditional owners on renewable energy projects. Once again, I encourage you to look at the detailed notes that I've sent out. And then Councillor Lindeman, at very short notice, thank you Councillor Lindeman, attended part of day 2, and the standout presentation for Councillor Lindeman was keynote speaker Russell Borthwick, CEO of Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce, presenting on their transition to green industries and commenting on their investment in supply chains and research and skills and partnerships. So I took 22 pages of notes at that conference and tried to put that into some slides and easy to read information for exec and councillors. And the second presentation, thanks for your patience on that one, the second report back was Councillor Davey on the Walga Renewable Energy Forum that you attended. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you for that, President McCarthy. So I've written up 2 reports for 2 different sessions that I was involved in this month. The reports I've sent through to councillors for them to read and come back with any questions, but the reports I prepared for this session I thought were for a broader community audience. So apologies if that wasn't the intent. So I will briefly run through those points. The reason I want to present both on the Walga Large Scale Renewable Energy Forum and carbon offset planting in our Shire, because there's common themes. So we're seeing a need for policies or guidance to support decision making for these types of projects and to meet the community's expectations regarding consultation. So it's a really nice flow on from the topic that President McCarthy has just described, because this is the implementation of some of those net zero actions.
I actually thought, excuse me for interrupting, in hindsight, the IIF conference was one that actually you should have attended. So your knowledge would have been much better suited than mine. My apologies.
So Walga held a large-scale renewable energy forum. I think it was the 27th of November. It was in Perth. It was free. They were noting that large-scale renewable projects have the potential to create amenity, environment, economic and social impacts. Although there's not currently any proposals of this nature in front of us as councillors, there's many occurring across the state. They bring both the potential for large opportunities and significant impacts, so it's good for us to be forewarned and educated. Local governments are very strongly calling on the state to provide an energy transition strategy and framework that will improve consultation and deliver positive and long-lasting community benefits and ensure the social licence of the proponent and the project is obtained and retained. What I took from the session was that there was currently no strategic planning policy in place to assist planners to assess these developments, and that consultation on the projects is regarded as unsatisfactory by some stakeholders. So, for example, developers are approaching landholders directly to negotiate projects without any prior local government notification of potential projects. This can result in one landholder reaping economic benefits and no broad community benefits being negotiated, despite the broader community feeling the impacts from the loss of amenity, increased traffic on the roads, etc. So local governments were looking to the state to offer guidance on their role in approvals and what were reasonable expectations regarding housing of workers, access road for projects, minimising impacts on local communities, those sorts of things. There was a very interesting case study that was presented from the Hay Shire in New South Wales, which is also a small agrarian community. They were unable to resist the development of wind farms in their shire because they'd been designated a zone by the state government that said that this was appropriate. So they decided to develop a united front. They developed fundamental principles for transition, positioned themselves to put forward the community's wants and needs consistently and successfully while ensuring resilience in primary production and community. They were aiming for a generational legacy from the funds coming in: housing, education, healthcare, childcare and economic growth in situ. They respectfully disseminated all the information and trusted people's capacity to understand and dealt with the narrative as it evolved. They managed to negotiate broad community benefits, including subsidised power for locals. They've developed a staged building resilience plan with clear actions at each stage. The extensive community consultation led to no objectors to the project, as they had an "even though I don't want it here, I'm focused on getting the best out of it for my community" approach. So in summary, they said that the change was happening with the community, not to the community. So I thought that was a really positive example to take away. The project has not progressed yet, but this has been in the lead up to the project. The second session I wanted to brief everyone listening on was on carbon offset planting. So companies are seeking to offset their emissions by purchasing cleared agricultural land across the state for revegetation projects, which can earn them carbon credits from the Commonwealth Government.
Councillor David, we'll just stick to that first report. And we'd like that one to come back to council, if we can first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask why?
There was a request on my behalf to go out and capture that data to bring it back to council. And then we need to look at that together and then go from there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, which is quite relevant to us at the moment, where we have got events happening in our shire that are not in our council plan, or we haven't engaged on those issues. And when we are revising our council plan, they'll obviously be part of that remit. Moving on to our en bloc. Recommendation is that council adopt the following items en bloc and resolves in accordance with each of the executive recommendations. 7.1, special council meeting held on 9th of October 2024. 7.2, ordinary council meeting held on the 27th of November 2024. 7.3, special council meeting held on the 4th of December 2024. 8.1, audit and risk management committee meeting held on the 13th of November 2024. 8.2, audit and risk management committee meeting held on the 28th of November 2024. 8.3, Chief Executive Officer Recruitment and Performance Review Committee meeting held on the 9th of December 2024. Item 9.1.1, Council Policy, Temporary Trading in Public Places. Item 9.2.1, Schedule of Accounts Paid as at the 30th of November 2024. 9.2.5, District Health Advisory Council representation. 9.2.6, Adoption of Risk Management Framework and Policy and Deferral of Internal Audit. 9.2.8, Schedules for the Annual General Meeting of Electors in 2025. And 9.3.1, Workforce Plan 2022 to 2026 Preliminary Review.
Sure, President. Just in regards to item 9.1.1, I know there's been some correspondence from Councillor Goobler in regards to potential additional sites to be added into that draft policy, which, if council's wish tonight is, as we're seeking a resolution to put out on public notice or seek community feedback, that may be one. Given the fact that Councillor Goobler may want to speak to that item, you may want to remove from en bloc, but in council's hands.
Would you like to remove that from en bloc, Councillor Goobler?
Yeah, I just wanted to add Mullally up onto that list, so I don't know how you want to do it.
Are you happy to do that through when we approve the policy, it will go out for comment? Are you happy to do that as part of that process, or would you?
Oh,
rather...
you can do, yeah, that's okay. Then.
Or I guess the alternative is, Shire President, is that if council wanted to actually include that in the draft policy as an alternative, then the actual policy that's going out to the community does actually include Mullally.
Okay. Well, how about we take it out of en bloc and then...
Mullally up. There we go. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've got it right a third time.
I said, do you want me to move to take it out of block then?
Okay, so we'll take that out.
Yeah, I'll move it then.
Okay. Would anyone like to second that? Councillor Lindeman? All in favour? Okay. Carried.
So just so we're clear, so you adopted all of those apart from the one we just spoke about to go to en bloc. Yep, thank you.
Everything except 9.1.1. Do we need now to move? We've taken that out, so we need to move the items that are in. At item 9.1.1, Council Policy, Temporary Trading in Public Places, the recommendation is that Council resolves to advertise Draft Council Policy HLTH-CP1, Temporary Trading in Public Places, for public comment for a period of 28 days. Would someone like to move that motion? Councillor Goobler, and seconded by Councillor Glover. Councillor Goobler, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, but I just wanted to add that Malali up into the group of things there, so that it goes out to the public to be for them to have their say into the
Thank you.
things.
So if I could interject, sorry, Shire President, so perhaps obviously we just need the agreement of the mover and the seconder, that the motion actually just becomes that Council resolves to advertise the draft policy, temporary trading in public places for public comment for a period of 28 days, and also include proposed location for Malayalup. Yep.
It's one of the hardest ones to do.
Yes, I had it. Anyway, we come to, I don't know whether...
So Councillor Goobler and Councillor Glover, are you happy to move that motion with that addition?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm a little unclear. I thought I was just moving the motion and then we would make an amendment. Is that correct?
That's the alternative way to deal with it, Councillor Glover. Yep, I was of the understanding that was the intention of Councillor Goobler in his motion to actually move something quite a little bit different from that, so hence that's why I interjected. So.
Sorry, I've jumped the gun, didn't I? Okay. So we're moving a motion. Councillor Goobler's motion will be that Council resolves to advertise draft Council policy HLTH CP1, temporary trading in public places for public comment for a period of 28 days with the addition of Malalyup.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Okay. And are you happy to second that, Councillor Glover?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. Peter, as Councillor Glover, would you like to comment on the motion being moved?
I don't know. Well, it's pretty straightforward, so I think it just as it is. So
Thank you.
otherwise, it would have been passed on block. So I just wanted to add that Malawi up into it.
Thanks, Councillor Goobler. Councillor Glover?
I think I'd like to thank the staff that have put this together. I think it's a very proactive approach in bringing it together to legitimising where trading will be and the opportunity for people to do that and bring people into the town to have businesses here. And I do agree with Councillor Goobler in making sure there was an inclusion for Malalyup in that area as well.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Would anyone else like to comment? Councillor Goobler, would you like to close?
I think it's pretty well been summarised now, so I think we'll just put it to the vote and pass it.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll put that to vote. All in favour? It's carried. Item 9.1.2, Development Application P24052, Additional Tourist Uses, Reception Centre, Camping Area and Events for the Lingalonga Estate. And Councillor Goobler is leaving the room. Councillors, would you like to drop standing orders and discuss this before we go into debate? Councillor Day.
Did we vote the en bloc? We did?
Yes, we did, yes. But this wasn't in en bloc. We took one out and voted en bloc. So would someone like to move to drop standing orders? Councillor Shand? Councillor Glover? Is seconded. All in favour? Carried. Okay, are there any comments or questions regarding this item, given that we've had the deputation? Councillor Shand?
I'd just like to state that I think this has been really well put together, and I think that between the staff and the proprietor that this is the kind of documents we actually need to see as council for us to make an informed decision. So my comment is that I think that it's a fabulous idea. I think we need to do more of this and the willingness of the applicant to actually work with us.
Thanks, Councillor Shand. Anyone else? Because I have got a comment to make, a question. All right. I was just wondering if, following the deputation, whether there is any other option, CEO or Director of Operations, that you've considered regarding the road. The road seems to be the only impediment. And I'm just wondering if following that deputation then.
Yeah, sure. So as part of the preparation for today's meeting, through you, Shire President and councillors, obviously, we want to take on board the feedback from the applicant and try and get a pragmatic outcome. I understand staff do have a potential alternate to condition 13 that certainly still provides a protection and risk management for the Shire and the surrounding residents, but may reduce the cost impact or burden on the applicant. So I might hand over to Mr Marshall and Mrs Dennis to take you through the details.
Thank you, Director of Operations.
I think I'll just hand it to Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager
Close.
Yeah.
Development Services.
Manager.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all right. Thank you, Madam President. So as part of our process, we always send applicants our reports so that they have an opportunity to give us some feedback on the conditions. And it was certainly very clear, condition 13 and 14, some concerns were raised. We weren't aware that Forest Products Commission had made some alterations to the road, so that was helpful information. However, we don't propose any change to condition 14 at this stage. If there is traffic management required as part of the bigger events, then certainly additional measures like watering the road can be considered as part of that separate traffic management. But we have suggested that condition 14 remain unchanged. With condition 13 though, taking on board that it's not always going to be the event that causes issues with the road. So the suggestion is that we include the words, if required by the Shire, in front of the rest of it, to enable the appropriate officer from the Shire to assess the road condition and determine whether or not grading is required either before or after. In some cases, it might actually key in with the Shire programmed work, so not incurring any additional costs for the Shire and not incurring unnecessary costs for the applicant is what we're sort of suggesting there. And this event is the ones with more than 300 people. So it wouldn't be the weddings, it would just be the larger events where that question would be asked of officers to assess the road condition before and after.
Councillor Glover?
Oh, sorry, you've got yours.
No, Councillor Glover, you're right.
Sorry, I don't want to push in. Yeah, I think that overgrading roads could potentially lead to more damage to the road because it would mean that we'd need to be resheeting more frequently as well. And so that would be a worry for me, depending on how many times a year that road would be graded. Because from what I could gather, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Shire in their program would be grading that road twice a year. And then if at these events as well would mean, how many more times a year would it be graded if it was to be the way it was? And then, although Forest Products have only a short amount of time where they will be working on that road, because obviously they're only going to be there while they're managing that plant, maintaining and working from that plantation. They're going to be working there for like the next few months, and then they won't be there for another 10 years, so that will be out of the equation with that. But yeah, so my query was more around, would we be over grading that road, then needing to do more resheeting of gravel to fix that, because there'll be nothing left of the road.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor Glover. Yeah, you're quite right, and it is one of the considerations that we discussed, and hence the amendment. And I'll be honest, I was less worried about the impost on the applicant, sorry, Mr Egan, but more about the quality of our roads, keying in, like taking on the sort of comments from last week as well, like if it did fit into our program, obviously our level of service for that area is twice a year, and then other services depending on safety. So we think with this sort of amendment, it really gives us control, but it also allows us to make a judgment call as well.
Thank you, Director of Operations. Councillor Shand.
Would there be anything prohibiting the applicant from actually watering? As we know, in mining and extractive industries, water is used to stabilise and bring down the dust emissions. So can we work with the applicant that way? Is there anything prohibiting us from doing so?
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Director of Operations. Manager Development Services.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, look, certainly it was considered as part of the original when we didn't know the road had blue metal on it. And the concern from the Manager of Works was that if you do have a number of people who aren't used to gravel conditions and you wet the road, there's more of a risk from balancing the risk between traffic hazard versus dust. So from their view, they didn't recommend, and that's why there's signage proposed to encourage people to slow down rather than to wet it down. So maybe while this is all, in the future, but maybe while there's blue metal there, it might be appropriate to be watering it, but over time that blue metal will degrade. Something I should have also mentioned was that as part of the Shire's Regional Road Group 5-year program, there is some funding there over the next, is it 5? Yeah, the 5-year program is for 5 years, sorry. So there'll be gradual improvements to that road where sections will be sealed, so it won't always be, I think it says 9.6 kilometres, that will reduce over time, but it won't be straight away. So over time, and potentially the next program, whether or not that extends even further, eventually that road might be sealed, but it's not about asking the applicant to do that up front, it's about trying to manage the risks associated with the level of use. So that not everyone, we can kind of share in the costs, I guess. Equitably, that's the thing.
Councillor Lindeman.
I guess I'm just thinking, if required by the Shire, so when do you go out there every time you catch wind of an event that might have 300 people, or it just seems a little bit open-ended if required? And I think from a financial perspective, if I was running a business and I have to grade nearly 10k of road, often with no real ability to budget for that because there's no program to say when to do it. So I just wondered if you could clarify that a little bit more, please.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Manager Development Services.
So the condition is not for us to grade the road, it's for the applicant to grade the road, but the requirement is for a staff member, appropriately, it won't be me, I'm not a road person, to actually assess the condition of the road before the event. Haven't answered that properly?
No, because it's a two-part amount of whether they're having three. So if required by the Shire prior to commencement of an event of more than 300 people,
yep.
How are you tracking more than 300 people?
I see.
Or are you just randomly going out, or are you going to just give a program? Because it's just 10k of obviously doing the roads is a lot to spend for a business owner.
Yes.
Councillor Lindeman, am I interpreting that correctly, that you're asking how will that event be triggered? How will you know that there's that event on? Yep. Manager Development Services.
It's about working with the applicant and talking that through. So there are certain events that will trigger an event application, so we'll know about those particular events, and it will be the other ones that are, I think we've got up to 800 people, those kinds of ones. Yes, we'll get wind of it, but we have a pretty good working relationship with the applicant, so it's about communicating and talking through those things. So, and I'm sure the people in that area also who are impacted on the road will also let us know if there's an issue with the road. So it's a bit of passive surveillance, but also communication with the applicant around what's happening, and then organising time for our staff who are out in the area quite regularly anyway to assess the road condition.
May I add to that, Madam President? I think Councillor Lindeman, just to maybe this may help, is rather than saying prior to every event, we're saying only if it's required. So rather than put the impost on the applicant that it has to do it every time there's more than 300 people, let us go and have a look first, and then if we say, yeah, look, it actually is required, then that's the trigger.
Sorry. That's a lot better way of
Thank you, Director of Operations. Councillor Patrick.
Thanks. Do you know if there's been any monitoring of traffic outside of these events on this road? And the reason I ask, probably for the last year and a half or so, at least once a month I cycle or run on this road, and it's been shocking the whole time, regardless of events coming in or out. And I personally feel, concerned that the state of the road you know, yes, it might be in a poor condition prior to an event, but absolutely no fault of the applicant. So the applicant's then in turn having to sort of, you know, maintain or do work on a road that is probably the Shire responsibility more so than the applicant's responsibility, given the state that that road is historically in anyway. So has there been any monitoring done to actually determine traffic movement, whether it be via trucks or just vehicles, regardless of this application?
Thank you, Councillor Patrick.
Thank
Director
you,
of
Madam
Operations.
President. Look, to answer your question, there's no data, so it's really speaking from anecdotal. And this is, again, part of really why we've added this prefix, that we would see it unfair as well to put that impost on the applicant if the road has been run down through lack of maintenance. And I'll give you an example. At the moment, we are quite behind with our grading program for two reasons. One is because of the Irishtown Bridge issue, and the second reason is that we had a grader, the tandem axle failed in for repairs, so that's probably set us back about 3 months as well. So again, it's really about just giving us a bit of flexibility to work with the applicant, but also the control. So we don't want to be in a position where the applicant can say, no, I don't agree, because we have the authority on behalf of council, but we also want to be able to go up there and make a judgment call and say, yeah, look, you're right. It should have been graded within the last 3 months. It hasn't. That's our problem. We'll sort it out. So look, it is relying on a bit of judgment, a bit of good faith. Certainly, we've enjoyed we've been motivated by the applicant, to be honest, to help out, and I don't see that changing. If it does, then we'll come back and we'll let council know. But I think that sort of gives us both a bit of flexibility and working in good faith.
Thank you, Director of Operations. Are there any other questions? Councillor Lindeman.
Oh no, I'm just being the devil's advocate in this, because I just think if required by Shire, it's required this week, it's required next week, and it's required the week after that, 10 k's worth of road. I just feel, I'm not sure of the wording. I know talking to the human beings behind this are reasonable, but on paper, if those human beings change, is that a solid and fair statement to put down for whether this person changes or whether the people up here change? That's what I'm after.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. And are we talking about future-proofing?
Yeah, I think we are, Madam President, and hence why that's there. And hence, again, the trigger is, one, the Shire reviewing it, but two, only at the commencement of an event that's greater than 300 people. So we can't just go out every week and say, oh, Mr Applicant, we think the road needs grading, off you go. We are also bound by the terms and conditions of that item. Does that help?
Thank you, Director of Operations.
Sorry, it does. Just one more, and I'll go on this point, is how many, if you're getting 500 cyclists or 300 cyclists with friends, how many times is it going to exceed that 300 marks? I think fairly easily exceeded fairly regularly. Once again, they're very general terms, so I know I'm banging on about it, but I just see that it could be problematic later if we haven't put something a little more concise in there.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Can I just understand the process that you're putting forward here? That when you're notified that an event of over 300 people will occur, you're going out to look at the road. Is that right?
Madam President, we would do it periodically anyway. However, in the event that we see a trigger, which would be notification.
So you'll see the state of the road before the event and then assess it after the event. Is that correct?
We would do both, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we take photographic evidence, video evidence, so we don't just do it by thumbsuck. It's a lot more technical than that. And obviously we have lots of records of work done in that area. So, but we don't have the particular data you're after, which is the traffic counting. We certainly don't have it at hand.
Thank you, Director of Operations.
I'll just make a comment. It's just been suggested maybe, this is not sort of the silver bullet, but going back to your second last point there, what about words to the effect of if required by the Shire, acting reasonably, or if reasonably required? I think that's what it comes down. Is this a fair impost, so reasonableness I think might
Something
be
fair.
the way to, still doesn't provide the certainty perhaps you're looking for, Councillor Lindemann, but I think it's the vibe, yeah.
So the wording is,
If reasonably required. Sorry, if reasonably required by the...
by the Shire.
By the Shire, yep. Yep, you can, yep.
Councillor Shand.
Can I just have an understanding of the 2 to 3 times a year that it's graded? Do we have any idea of what the current use of it is? So are there trucks on it? Are there cars on it? What is the trigger for actually grading it? Is it rain? Is it... Because otherwise, how will we know that it's not our responsibility anyway, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. Very broad question, Councillor Shan, thank you. Look, we do have a level of service that we prepare our budgets to for grading. So there's, if you like, there's that benchmark. We also respond to works requests, which we have done a number of times out there, not only for the general road condition or the condition of the sheeting, but also for trees down, as an example. So look, I find it difficult to answer your question, and I'm not trying not to, I'm actually trying to. But really, I don't have the level of information at hand that would, I think, give you a suffice answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Director of Operations. Councillor Glover.
This question is with the greatest respect to the person who provided the advice. But with regard to, I'm back on about water and the water truck, just because I do know that by watering the road, it will actually alleviate a lot of the concerns that we're talking about in regard to dust. It is about the timing of when the water is put on the road. So it would mean that, and with the greatest respect, when it was about driving on a road that's gravel road that's wet causes harm or potential raises an increase of an accident, people driving on it. But if the water was on the road early in the morning before the traffic's there, it's got time to settle, it's not puddles of water, it's just settling the dust, as noted with the shale that has been put on the road as well by Forest Products Commission, it actually solves a lot of problems there. Now, they don't go out in the middle of the day and they don't water in the middle of the day. They don't water when there's traffic there. They go out really early in the morning and then they put the water on the road then. So can we still go back to looking at the, and I think the applicant has already mentioned it, it's an easy fix for them to actually just put some water on the road when times are that it's going to be dusty. Now, that's not going to be all year because there'll be times when the road's going to be damp anyway when these events are on, particularly True Grit, isn't it? Is that on in when it's sort of the wintry weather, the cooler months, or is it in summer?
Councillor Glover, thank you. Response from Director of Operations.
Mere mail here. I'm not quite sure actually what the question is. Was it something along the lines of can we put some parameters around when a water truck would be used?
Something in regard to, for the dust, yeah. And because it's an easy fix for the applicant as well, it's just to, on the dry days, water the road when it is necessary as well.
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
And sorry, Madam President, if I may, is that sort of in the same trigger area, i.e. when we're looking at item 13, the commencement of an event with more than 300 people?
Sorry, I missed that, Director of Operations.
I just wonder if it's which item it sort of if council were to include that sort of as a notation, is it reasonable that there's a trigger point, or is it just something that council would like in as an option?
Are we at the point of exploring wording for, let's just deal with this one
A
first.
trigger point would probably be appropriate, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions of an amendment?
Do you think we should just do some wordsmithing here?
Yeah, I
And,
think so, Madam President, yeah.
Should we take 5 and do that?
Yeah, well-
Councillor Davey first.
So we had a similar discussion around traffic management, dust management for an application, I think, at the last meeting. And because there are so many different ways of managing dust, we talked about relying on the guidance that already exists, because they may use glue on, they may use blue metal, they may use water, they may use grading. And the important thing is that you get the outcome rather than stipulating the means. So before we go into wordsmithing and stipulating when it shall be graded, when it shall be watered, perhaps it's better to fall back on that guidance.
On the guidance.
Yeah, there's a nuisance dust management document referenced at some stage.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Don't we normally say have a dust management plan?
Yes, we do, but this activity itself is not dust creating, it's the use of the roads that's creating the dust. So condition 14 currently deals with the area that we've identified as dust impact, because that's where the houses are. And it is only Southampton Road, we haven't dealt with any of the other roads, because that's where the objections came from. So yes, at the moment, as I mentioned earlier, the blue metal weathering it down might do the trick for now, but once that wears off, it may not. So this is for the life of the approval, so it's just to consider those timeframes as well.
Thank you, Manager Development Services. Councillor Patrick.
Just 2 things around this. So my understanding with item 13, it wasn't so much the dust, like the grading the road isn't so much about the dust, it's about the quality of the road. And actually watering roads that have got potholes and things on it actually can lead to a lot worse. But could we actually put this back to the applicant to ask, I know we're concerned and we're raising concerns around this item, but can we see if the applicant actually has any concerns with that wording or not? Because it might be a moot point. If we're sort of arguing it on behalf of someone and they're actually quite happy with that proposed wording, then it might just put all of our minds at ease. Can we do that?
Just a moment.
We're out of session though, we're out of...
Standing orders are suspended, so
Yeah.
it's our discretion. Mr Eden, are you comfortable to be put on the spot and answer that question, or would you rather not?
You're comfortable
Okay.
with that wording and stance?
Would you come... we've got no microphone, so do we need to...
You want to maybe just come up to the...
CEO, can I ask you to put that question in good words to Mr Eaton?
Yeah, so obviously, through you, Chair, Mr Eaton, we've obviously had a discussion around the reasonableness of the proposed changes based on your feedback today or your deputation. Are you comfortable with the way that the matter is presented and the words that are on the screen? So if reasonably required by the Shire, so especially under item 13 or condition 13.
Thank you, councillors, for your discussion. I agree with Councillor Lindemann with the people that are there you're dealing with now. It can change, but as it stands right now with the Shire staff that we're dealing with, I'm happy with that. We can notify them a year in advance or more of when the big events are. It's not a surprise that there's a big event on a date. I know next year, right through, a calendar's already there, exactly when it is. So their works programs, as an example, we've got the New Year's Festival coming up on New Year's Eve, and the council are grading the road today. Now, they always grade the road the last week before Christmas coming out to our place, but it happens to coincide with a big event that's on.
Director of Operations.
Madam President, if I may, just obviously the Manager for Works and Services is beaming in, so thank you, Damien. He's put a suggestion that, again, just to hearing council, hi Damien, maybe just to settle your mind, we put in a maximum number of grades that we can actually impost on the applicant. So
That
just to limit it. Yeah, Damien's actually suggesting, say, 3. Would that help?
Through the chair.
Councillor Lindemann.
Thanks. Through the chair, I think that when you talk fair and reasonable, I think it's a good way to kind of say we're sitting somewhere, we're both meeting here, so expectations from both parties are met. So I think that's a good idea, but I'm very happy to hear from the applicant.
Mr Eaton, what do you think of an idea of putting a limit on the number of gradings?
Well, I like the idea of putting the limit on. I'd like to reduce the number. I just think the benefits to the whole community when we do have a big event are so large and so outreaching that, and I do understand the road thing, I get it, but I just think to the Shire's requirements and that, we're happy to work with it, but we know so far in advance when those big events are going to be. Yeah.
Thank you,
We'll work
Mr
with
Eaton.
whatever.
Thank you, Mr Eaton. CEO, can
And
comment on that?
apologies, Ms Dennis. Is there any restrictions as to the amount of events that can be held each year? I'm just thinking if we're looking at putting a limit on the amount of grades or grading of the road, if indeed there is a number of events and there is some damage to the road, then probably looking at managing the financial risk to council.
So, thank you. There's no, at the moment, the idea of having, the way that the approval is currently worded is to try and deal with the most, like, weddings is something that's a new activity. Would it be fair to say a new activity there? So we're trying to say we don't want to see an event application every time there's an event. We're trying to, every time there's a wedding or similar event. So there is no limit to the number of events. It's just a limit to the number of people at those events. So if the numbers are more than 800 people, then that triggers an event application under our separate framework. So if they're all under 800, you could, and I don't think Mr Eden wants to work this much, but you could have 365 events, you know, but that's not reasonable. That wouldn't happen because that's a lot of work to be doing that sort of thing, but that's, you know, there's no limit that we've put on it. It's just we've limited numbers based on facilities. That's how we've sort of worked it, and also based on history and the understanding that we have of the use of the venue currently.
Thank you, Manager Development Services. CEO.
I was just going to say, look, councillors, it's a call for you as to what you believe is reasonable and relevant given the information provided not only by staff but also by the applicant today, and managing that the potential sort of financial risk if indeed you wish to put a top end to it, being a maximum of 3 times at the applicant's cost. Staff sort of, you know, as a compromise suggested we put in there if required by the Shire, and then obviously the procedural fairness or the, you know, reasonably required was a compromise. So if you then wish to include an upper limit to provide some certainty for applicant, then that's a determination for council.
Councillor Davey.
I have a question about bushfire risk. So I
we'll
wasn't
hold
sticking
that
my
up
hand
then.
up for this, but that reads 3 times ever at the moment.
Sorry?
It currently reads at a maximum of 3 times ever.
Oh, yeah. Councillor Lindeman.
I just had one other question in regards to the speed limit where you're talking about slowing down. Is there a specific speed limit on number 14, I think it says drive slowly? What's the limit currently?
Can we hold that thought until we finish off this edit? So is there any comment regarding this? Are you comfortable with a maximum of 3, which places the burden on the Shire if it's more than that? Bearing in mind
Look, personally, knowing the Shire's got it twice within a maintenance plan, I would have brought it down to a maximum of 2 times a year, which means the road's graded once a quarter. Again, that's my thought on it. Once a quarter on a road like that, I mean, having lived on very long dirt roads with lots of truck traffic previously, you know, once a quarter is still a lot more than you get a lot of roads with a lot more traffic than what happens out there, in my opinion. I don't know how councillors feel, but for me, I'd be happy to suggest we reduce that number to 2, knowing that the Shire is doing it twice as well, brings it to once a quarter.
Councillor Shand. Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor
Is
Shand.
there any way to ensure a review? Because I agree with what Councillor Patrick has said. It's 2 times a year, and as we don't know yet what the burden on that road is, with the data, it's really hard to say. So quarterly, I think, is fair. if it was required, but can it have a review?
Thank you, Councillor Shan. Just a moment. Yep, good idea. We'll just allow our ops team to have a chat.
So I'm happy to be corrected, but just consulting with Mrs. Dennis here. I would think that this is as this is a formal application, that the applicant would want certainty, and definitely the approval and the conditions run with the land regardless of the individual. So I think tonight's decision is about providing certainty moving forward. So I acknowledge that that's quite a pragmatic way forward, but I think in this matter it would be about being definitive.
Thank you, CEO. So with item 13,
If I
Councillor
may,
Mitchell. Yep.
I actually agree to changing it to twice, so quarterly.
We've removed standing orders. So how many councillors would like to leave this? Or would like to change this to a maximum of 2? Okay, we'll please change that to 2.
Yep.
Maximum of 2. And are there any other comments? Councillor Lindeman, you spoke of the speed limit signs.
So we're going to keep that one as is. So it's now maximum 2, yeah? Okay. I like the maximum 3, but anyway, that's okay. Number 14 was just, I wasn't aware of the actual speed limit on that road, and then what is the reduced speed? What would you suggest is reduced speed for number 14?
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Manager Development Services?
So this conditions come from Manager of Works, and it's not about changing the speed limit as such, it's more about warning signs to drive slowly. So because it is an open, I know it's an open speed, but it's about driving to the conditions on a gravel road. So you'd hope you're not clicking through there too quickly. It's more about during those events just having those reminders up for people so they don't become complacent. That's the idea.
Thank you, Manager Development Services. Any more comments from councillors? Councillor Davey.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the bushfire risk if I can, and similar to the question I asked Paul when he was on the stand. So if we have a look at the response from DFES that came through just recently, December, it's page 601 of 768 of the attachments, if that's helpful. So that looks like it's $5.99. So if we could go down to 601. Great, thanks. So you can see under 2 policy measure 6.5C, compliance with the bushfire protection criteria, it's saying here, this is the item I was referencing before, it does not comply. And it talks about sheltering in place just on the start of the next page, that sheltering on site is not considered acceptable. And then later in this same document, it says that so the advice doesn't change, and then right down the bottom it says that it is noted, this is on page 605 of 768, the second dot point. It's, yep, just there. It says it's noted that while a safer place on site has been identified, like it doesn't seem acceptable, right? So last meeting we were discussing that an event was not to proceed because there was no safe shelter in place, and that the CESM had advised that the event not be approved on that basis. Can you please explain what the CESM's response to this item was and why it's being treated differently?
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Manager Development Services.
Sure. Thanks for the question. This is a hard one, and it's great for Cecilia to be on a plane somewhere else right now. So DFES, they take a pretty strong view on these policy positions, and the way they answer to most applications are the same. The difference between this particular application and the event application that we had before was that the event application, they haven't done a site-specific bushfire emergency evacuation plan or a bushfire management plan, whereas this property, they've got one of those. The SESM's been involved in providing feedback to the bushfire consultant around local information, so things like the evacuation route. So from the bushfire consultant, sorry, I'm going to say it around the wrong way, the consultant recommended a certain route out of the property in the event of an emergency, whereas the SESM has actually provided feedback based on local knowledge, based on the understanding of what happens in bushfire response in this particular area. So it is an enhanced response, am I going to say it right? A bit of smoke happens, it's pretty much planes starts coming until they're told to go away. So there is a very more elevated response to bushfire or signs of bushfire in this particular case. So,
Otherwise known as the Blackwood Valley response.
Thank you. So, yes, it is a vulnerable land use, but the measures in the bushfire management plan around closing the venue in extreme or catastrophic fire danger, having those specific and prescriptive things that the applicant needs to abide by, manages that risk. So in a shire with, 45% state forest and 80% bushfire prone, this is an outcome that is considered by the planner on balance to be one of the factors to consider in an application, but not a factor to completely prevent the applicant from proceeding. It's about managing the risk. So they have to comply with their bushfire management plan and the measures that they've indicated they're going to comply with, such as closing in those times. So that's where the risk is managed.
Thank you, Manager Development Services.
Probably, Madam President, just if I could just add a small item to that. There's also an operational agreement that in the event of a fire actually heading towards Lingalonga, whoever's on site will be mustered to the location that we've talked about, and they will not move, they will not evacuate until directed by the Chief Fire Control Officer, and the Chief will tell them which way to go. So operationally, that's already been resolved between the SESM and our Chief as well. So there's quite a step ahead of sort of what we've experienced in the past, and given that there's 3 routes of escape and a chief just down the road, the officers are pretty satisfied with that response.
Thank you, Director of Operations. Manager Development Services.
And another just a little additional add-on there is that the SESM is satisfied that there is safe space to muster people in the event of an emergency and have that aerial support not impacted like the other event application we had. There's concern about where to actually put people in a response situation. So when they're trying to dump the water, making sure that people aren't going to be under that big pile of water. So it doesn't limit that capacity to fight the fire. So they're satisfied that there's sufficient space for that to occur.
Thank you. Manager Development Services. Any more questions? Councillors, I recommend we resume standing orders and debate the topic with the amendments that we've requested to item 13, wasn't it? Okay. Would someone like to move that we resume standing orders? Councillor Patrick and seconded Councillor Mitchell. All in favour? Carried. Would someone like to move the recommendation under 9.1.2, Development Application P24052? Councillor Lindeman, Councillor Patrick, Councillor Lindeman.
Just obviously this has been worked really well, and I'm supportive of activities that are great for your health as well. Not always if you go down the hill a bit quick. But I'd also like to mention that I went to, it's like dropping your holiday stuff, but I'm going to drop it in anyway. Mount Wellington downhill mountain bike adventure people, and they had been to Lingalonga in Tasmania, so from Tasmania they had been there. They were very aware, and also at Medina out in Tasmania is one of the world-class mountain bike trails, and they were also very familiar with Lingalonga and had many people had been there. So, you know, this is quite an exciting thing for us to be noted in other states Australia-wide. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Councillor Patrick?
Look, nothing really to add apart from the fact that, I've been to a number of events there, needed medical support after snapping an ankle at an event there. and found them well organised and well planned. So I'm very confident with the operator and what they're doing, and I think it's a good outcome if we can get this passed.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Mitchell.
Just to clarify that we're going straight on with the motion as it is. We don't have to do anything formal because it was agreed to in out of session. Yep.
That's correct, Councillor Mitchell. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion, for or against? Councillor Glover.
Yeah, I'd like to speak for the motion. I would really like to thank the staff for what they've done with this and providing really good advice and feedback and really active problem solving as well with the applicant, and it's helping to assist business to develop and grow, and it's a fantastic culture within our shire to be helpful to build business and create business coming forward, and yeah, obviously along with good policy and practice as well. So thank you for that, and it's a really good step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Councillor Shand.
Yeah, the same, ditto, Councillor Glover. I'd also just like to apologise to the applicant for things that may have happened in the past that has soured or created issues. I'm sure that going forward with the way that this work has been done, that it's hopefully won't happen again. So I think it's brilliant. I think everything that we've been given, like I said in the opening comment, was what I've been looking for. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Davey.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with the fact that you've managed to balance having to be prescriptive for ongoing events and yet leaving some of things like the bigger traffic management plan to the bigger events. So it must have been really difficult to manage the balance between getting enough prescription in there for the smaller events and not overwhelming them with things that should only be triggered for larger events. So I thought that was quite impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Any other comments for or against the motion? Okay, Councillor Lindeman, would you like right of reply?
No, thank you.
We'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Carried. Yeah. We'll just get Councillor Goobler back into the room. Yes. And Councillor Goobler has re-entered the room. Thanks for your patience, Councillor Goobler. Moving on to item 9.2.2, the 2023-2024 annual report. Would councillors like to move the recommendation? Or first of all, would you like any questions? All right, would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Patrick? Would someone like to second? Councillor Shand? Councillor Patrick?
Look, nothing really to add. I mean, well, more than what was sort of said at the agenda briefing previously. It's a really well put together report. I think a lot of work and effort's gone into it, and it gives a lot of good, meaningful information for the community. So congratulations to all those involved with it, but from my perspective it's a fair and accurate representation, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't support it and pass this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Shand?
Yeah, I feel the same way also, that I have had some feedback from people who read it and have been very pleased with its format and the way that the information's been presented.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Shand. Councillor Davey?
I was really pleased to hear about the urban tree canopy work. I didn't realise that was happening, so that was a nice one to learn about. I just wanted to ask a quick question whether permission was sought to feature the children's faces that are in the report.
Yes, that's been received. Yep.
Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Patrick, right of reply?
No, nothing really to add, thanks.
Councillors, we'll put that to vote. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Item 9.2.3, Council meeting consultation and 2025 meeting dates. Would someone like to move the motion? Councillor Shand. Would someone like to second? Councillor Davey. Councillor Shand. Just a moment.
We've got two recommendations there.
Probably if I just give a very brief
Oh, I
introduction
beg your
again.
pardon.
Yeah.
I do beg your pardon.
Yep. So, would you like me to give an introduction?
Well, I know which one I want.
I'll give
Yes,
a very
please.
unbiased introduction. So, yeah.
Yes, please.
Very similar to the introduction at the agenda briefing, councillors. There's two options. Obviously, as part of the requirements under the Local Government Act, we're required to determine and set our meeting dates for 2025. The two options that are provided, or executive recommendations provided by staff, is one that includes an agenda briefing, and then executive recommendation 2 is one that's just the council meetings themselves and dispensing with the agenda briefing sessions. The body of the report that was put together by staff provides some commentary around the different options. And at the agenda briefing session, I believe there was a question regarding how many views, or the average views, and Mrs. Clifford has done that little bit of research. I might, just to help to inform the discussion, just provide that some of those numbers, if it's okay.
Thank you, CEO.
Through the chair. So I had a look, and the average views of agenda briefing are 71 views, and the average views of an OCM are 90.
Thank you, Acting Manager Corporate Finance and Corporate. With that introduction, would councillors like to ask questions before we go into debate?
If we're wanting to do that, shall I probably need to suspend standing orders if you want to ask questions of staff?
Okay.
But it's up to council.
Right, well, would anyone like to move the motion? Sorry, would anyone like... Hang on. We can't move the motion until we...
You can move a motion now. It's just which motion you wish
Which
to move.
motion?
Yeah.
All right, we'll suspend standing orders. Would someone like to move to suspend standing orders? Councillor Shand? Councillor Davey? All in favour? Oh, sorry. Councillor Shand, speak for.
There's two recommendations here, and when we get to that point, then I'll speak on it.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, I'd like the opportunity to discuss which way we want to go before we move a motion either way.
Thank you. And Councillor Mitchell?
I'd like the vote, basically I'm voting against suspending standing orders because I believe we've discussed it we all understand we're at the agenda briefing. I think it's time we just went into debate on this one. However, I will ask for clarification to the CEO as a procedural motion. My understanding is that we have now got option one on the has been moved, so we haven't done that yet.
No, so would you like me to respond?
Yes, please. CEO,
Yep.
I'm a bit lost actually.
No, that's okay. So, yeah, my apologies regarding the confusion. So, before you are two options. We haven't moved or seconded either of any of the options. All that the matter that before council at the moment is a procedural matter, and that is to suspend standing orders. There's no other motions before council.
I'm sorry, I thought Councillor Shand had moved.
No, that was for suspending
we're
standing
talking to
orders.
suspend
I
standing
know
orders.
prior to that. Okay,
Would
so-
anyone else like to speak for, oh, sorry.
So can I just clarify, we're going to have a discussion and
No, at the moment we're voting
on standing orders, but I'd just like to clarify, when we've had the discussion, the open discussion, if standing orders are passed, there might be five may wish to go to option 1, others may wish to go to option 2. Which one and how do you get it on the floor? My understanding was that you moved a motion when you had these option 1 and option 2. You moved option 1, have a vote, have a discussion. If that falls over, option 2 then kicks in.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion being put, which is to suspend standing orders? At the moment, we're just voting to suspend standing orders. Would anyone else like to speak to that? We'll put that to vote. Those in favour of suspending standing orders? Okay, carried. Now, my first question, CEO, what is the process for debating where we have two options?
Yeah, so given that you've suspended standing orders, really the local law does not apply, so it's up to council to have that discussion. You can ask questions of staff, and then we reinstate standing orders. And as Councillor Mitchell, depending on whether there's a level of agreement on the way forward in regards to what happens when standing orders are suspended, then you may wish to put the motion. But Councillor Mitchell, in her comments, was correct, as in when there's two options that are put forward, one way of handling with it is really just to deal with it. And someone moves whichever option it is, someone else would second it, then that matter is debated. In the event that whichever option that is not carried, then the second option goes up, or indeed an alternative motion can be put forward.
Councillor Goobler.
I was just going to ask a question in relation to the option, if you had an agenda briefing and then you have the council meeting the following week, it was reported that some of the staff said that the financial issue was a problem. Could that be brought on to if it was left a week for the financials to be done, and because it really doesn't have to be discussed at the agenda briefing. If any questions relating to finance, if it was put out, say, the day of the agenda briefing, that you still got a week to the AGM, that any written options could be written into the staff and get an answer for that way. So that's my option. And that's what my thought of, if there's a problem for staff doing financials, that alleviates the problem by just putting it back 1 week, that's all.
So
Thank you.
that is a way forward, an administrative way forward to deal with questions regarding the financial report. So you're correct, Councillor Goobler.
Thank you. Councillor Shand.
Just trying to wrap my head around why we have two recommendations.
Yeah.
Is it because of those reports and also because of the workforce plan in man hours by attendance being here? Is that why this has been introduced?
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Excuse me for a moment, councillors.
So that is the way forward. I believe that councillors wanted to have an informal discussion and ask questions of staff. That's why we suspend standing orders. Then we go out of standing orders and
debate one.
And debate one or the other, whichever.
Okay, that's clarified my understanding, and I'll just share that with you in case you were wondering the same thing. You probably weren't. But we're having a discussion now and trying to deliberate whether we will put one of these options forward to vote for. Is that your understanding? Through a discussion at the moment, then we'll put one forward. CEO, would you like to expand on that?
So probably just to be clear, and hopefully can be clear. So yes, essentially, councillors, staff, we didn't get sort of during our discussions at the workshop, we didn't get a strong sort of indication as to the way forward on this matter. In the event of any sort of clear pathway forward, the discussion we had at officer level was to provide both options up, given the fact that there could be a divergence of views. So in the event that council wanted to continue with the current practice of the agenda briefings for all the reasons that it was introduced and that are contained within the report, then there is option or executive recommendation number 1. In the event that council wanted to dispense with the agenda briefings and have more of the workshop environment, which again the pros and the cons are detailed within the report, then there is executive recommendation number 2. So procedurally, council has agreed to suspend standing orders. That provides a less formal environment. It allows for questions to be asked of staff, and but no debate is to occur. Then procedurally, what would occur is then you pass a resolution to come out of or to reinstate standing orders, and then it's up to a councillor to put forward one of those motions, or indeed another motion, because staff aren't recommending one way or the other, they're just giving you options, and then for that, whichever motion that is, to be seconded and then debated. And depending on whether that's then passed, then that becomes council's resolution. In the event that whichever motion that is fails to get the required votes, then an alternative motion is put forward.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Davey.
I have a question. If we were to retain agenda briefings, what is the mechanism for moving deputations to occur at agenda briefings instead of at council meetings, so that we can hear from proponents and give us time to consider their information, for people to ask further questions before we get that item in front of council?
Thank you, Councillor Davey.
Yes, so thanks very much for your question, Councillor, and through you, Madam Chair. So yes, my understanding and advice is that the guidelines around the agenda briefings were adopted by council resolution, so it would be a resolution just to amend those guidelines to allow visitations or deputations, but that can be done procedurally.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Lindenburn had a question.
With the agenda briefings, I mean, you've got to prepare the information prior to a meeting anyway. I know it takes time, but it does give you a bit of a trial run about picking up on mistakes, problems, things that were or were not included. So don't want to speak for the motion, but is it not valid that you would spend the time anyway doing the work that would then be presented at a meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. The question is that work going to be, would it be still there?
Potentially, yes.
Councillor Davey.
Sorry, I wasn't quite clear. So is it procedural to move the deputations to the agenda briefing rather than motion? Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Yes, so just to be clear, yes, we need to, as the original guidelines for agenda briefings were adopted by council, they need to be resubmitted and brought up with that suggested change to be included and then adopted by resolution of council. Yep. So it is a procedural matter, but it would need to be adopted by council. Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Could I ask then if that procedural motion, is that going to be dealt with now, or if that's going to be the suggestion, does that then have to be dealt with, or does that get on the back burner?
I think that has to come back to.
Yeah, it would come back to a future meeting. It'd be like reviewing your terms of reference for your committees or any other
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Glover.
My query is, I don't know how many years we've had agenda briefings for. Sorry? Too many. I thought I heard that. But obviously they were introduced for a reason. What would the reason be for staff? Can a staff member answer this as to why we have option 2 now, when obviously there was a reason for bringing in option 1? in the beginning of time. So is it just because it's a review of it, or is there actually some concerns over having agenda briefings that staff are concerned about?
Thanks, Councillor Glover. Have we got compelling reasons for looking for a change?
Oh, look, I think we just want to provide all options before council tonight. I think the report details some of the considerations that councillors may wish to take into account when making a decision tonight. And there has been some discussions, obviously, around the cost impact, the time impact on staff, and then the fact that from time to time not all councillors are available to attend agenda briefings, so therefore quite often some of the information is repeated at the ordinary council meetings themselves. But again, I don't want to step into the debate and provide my personal views. I did instruct and request staff to provide a balanced report, and certainly not, hence that's why you've got the two recommendations tonight and not a recommendation from staff on the way forward.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, CEO. Councillor Glover.
May I just, with a follow-up from that, with having the agenda briefing recorded, then if staff or otherwise, if councillors can't attend, it would give them the option to be able to catch up on that as well. Sorry, that's probably just more of an observation rather than a question. Just take that back.
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
Still thinking about it.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Lindemann.
Are we taking comments? Okay.
Just not debate.
Not a debate, just comment. The comment is if you've got 90 views for a meeting and 70 for an agenda briefing, it's not too far away. So there is some interest in agenda briefings. That's what I see. It has been debated before. I think it has been raised before to get rid of it. So it's always good to bring it back up and let people discuss it for sure. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Councillor Lindemann. Any more comments or questions? Would you like to, we're going to go back to standing orders, and I think our process will be to move one of the recommendations. Councillors, which would you like to move first?
Sorry, just need to reinstate standing orders first, Shire President.
Yes, but do we need to nominate one?
That would be for
right,
whichever
okay.
councillor to determine.
We'll be brave and we'll reinstate standing orders and we'll go for it. Would someone like to move to reinstate? Councillor Patrick, seconded Councillor Glover. All in favour of reinstating standing orders? Carried. Right. Would councillors like to move a motion? Councillor... Councillor Shand, you were the first I looked at.
I'd like to move that we look at alternative one.
Alternative one? Yep. And Councillor Davey, are you seconding? Yeah. And... All right, Councillor Shand.
I think it's really important that we maintain the trust that we've been building with the community, and even though the views are, one could say, a bit low, there's still that interest there, and I believe that depending on the content, it increases. So to go backwards from that, I think, is to remove the trust that we've been building in the community, and I'm not for that at all. My platform was on transparency and being open about what we're doing, so I want to maintain that.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Councillor Davey.
Very similar thoughts over here. So I would not only like to see the agenda briefings retained because of their ability to promote transparency and give people time to consider the matters that have been put before them, but I'd also like to actually load them up further and have the deputations be happening in those sessions. So I've found it very valuable to take away the information that is received at the agenda briefing and propose alternate motions that I wouldn't be able to necessarily come up with on the fly. So I found them really useful. Even though I haven't attended the last two, I would like to see them continue next year.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Would anyone like to speak against the recommendation? Councillor Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. Look, it is one I'm very conflicted about, purely because I totally agree around the transparency for the community. The number of views in relation to what we don't know is that there's 70 for the agenda briefing and 90 for the OCM. Is it the exact same 70 plus 20 more for the OCM? We don't have those numbers to know. But I do feel it's fairly hypocritical of part of the council in that there's this pressure and stress being put onto the administration to reduce costs. And, you know, what we're asking for is for quite a few members of staff to be available for an additional night of the week, which therefore incurs further costs to the administration. And that's probably the main reason I'm against it, is if, you know, we've pushed, or part of the council has pushed around the fact that workforce has to be reviewed and if possible minimised and saving money and all that kind of thing, yet at the same time we're saying we expect you to be available on an additional night of the week, which is going to incur overtime, penalty rates or time in lieu, whatever it looks like. And I don't think that there's a good balance in that space. So whilst I do actually get a fair bit myself out of the agenda briefing for the reasons that have been spoken of, I think the flip side of it is, you know, we're asking for one thing and then we're expecting another. So that's the main reason that I'm not supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Is anyone else supporting the recommendation? Councillor Lindemann?
Yeah, I'm supporting this recommendation. I mean, reducing costs is important, but this is probably not the place to do it. I think you've got to put the value back in the people, and we have to spend the money because that's what we are, service delivery, information, etc. It's just not the place to cut costs. I think we might be doing that with maybe some solar panels on a roof somewhere. That's cutting costs. Sorry, I had to slip that in. But I also think there's opportunities when presented to ask a lot of questions that I wouldn't normally. Also, site visits are the opportunity. When you come to the agenda briefing and, you know, there's got that week in between, and there's nothing like walking the ground. Had people gone to Lingalonga, walk the ground, you can get a real idea of the fact that, you know, that particular place, its setting is to have a bit of bush because, you know, people do downhill racing in amongst the bush and the trees and the danger and the rocks and whatever. You have to see it, and I think we would miss that opportunity without agenda briefings. I'm not either for deputations either at an agenda briefing. I think they need to also remain at a council meeting because that's the opportunity and time to prepare and give us the information then. But anyway, look, I'm just for keeping agenda briefings because I like the information and I like to sit on the kind of information we've been delivered and ask the questions throughout the week if required, if something comes up.
Thank you, Councillor Lindemann. Would anyone else like to speak against the motion? Councillor Mitchell?
Needless to say, and I'd like to foreshadow option 2, but I'm reading the room and pretty much know how it's going to go. I very much urge you to read between the lines of what the officers are indicating, that it's an impost on their time. Looking at those charts up there, I suspect we took on agenda briefings in 15, I think, and I am firmly against, because we always have. Council rang perfectly without any backlash, etc. prior to that. You actually know what you're training, you've got to prepare, you've got to know your information. As far as missing workshops, etc., I greatly appreciate the fact that I've been able to Teams in. There's no reason why you have to be for a workshop. You can, you know, like the generosity of those presenting is that you can Teams in and you can listen in. However, I am reading the room. I do know how this one is going to go, but I urge you to not do "'cause we always have." Think about it. You'll never know unless you give it a go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Glover?
Yeah, I'd like to speak for item 1, I think it's called, for this motion. I think council meetings are where the council... Sorry, I'll start again. Council meetings are where council's most important decisions should be made. And it would concern me that the discussions around these decisions were going to be held more behind closed doors, at workshops, etc., where the community are not able to hear how or further information about the issues that directly affect them. It's great to see that the council has taken meaningful steps to address community concerns that were raised in the community survey of 2019 regarding communication and transparency. And this has been achieved in many ways, but also including the implementation of live streaming of both the agenda briefings and the council meetings. The fact that agenda briefings received an average of now 71, thank you for that, meetings views over 10 meetings, so it's an average of 71 people per meeting, demonstrates that the community is engaging with and benefiting from these efforts by providing access to the decision-making process. The council is upholding transparency and accountability, and I stand for that. It's giving people a clearer understanding of how decisions are made and how they will be affected by them or not. And ensuring that most critical decisions are made in council meetings, the discussions are open to public, further supports democratic values. Keeping these discussions accessible rather than behind closed doors or in private workshops fosters trust and confidence in the council, and it allows the community members to feel informed and involved in the matters that impact directly on them. These measures reflect a commitment to genuine transparency, which helps strengthen the relationship between the council and the people it serves. Maintaining and expanding these practices will likely continue to enhance public trust and participation in the democratic process.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Well, I will. I would like to welcome consideration of the opportunity cost of having agenda briefings, and particularly to our community, because I believe there's exceptional value to be gained from councillor workshops where councillors have the opportunity to take a deep dive into complex or unusual items or topics where we may not have sufficient shared knowledge to make a decision, or where we may not have a shared understanding of the outcomes possible. This has been particularly evident in multiple workshops that led into our decision regarding the VC Mitchell Park business case and operating models, and also through the risk management policy. Workshops have proven to be valuable to councillors, so much so that we have a burgeoning workshop agenda to work through. And our workshops are valuable to community members as the resulting executive recommendations and reports are available prior to the OCM and provide an exceptional level of detail. So as a result of our workshops, we've considered community expectations in the preparation of the reports. So rather than the executive preparing those reports and then coming back to us, having them to go back again, we have all that discussion and community expectations prepared, or the debate, or not even debate, but we've discussed that in our workshop forums with executives. So the quality of reports that come out of our workshops are exceptional. Agenda briefings raise more questions following the agenda briefing on these unusual items and create more work. So when we had a difficult item before us I think in the last November, was it the November report, we did the gravel extraction, each one of us, or most of us, had questions emailed to staff and they had to respond to every last one of them. I had 2 pages of questions that were there because I didn't understand one small detail. And they had to answer all of my questions in detail, and I believe there were more that happened. So in addition to preparing for an agenda once and an OCM twice, they had a week's worth of work in between. Even before these additional questions, agenda briefings require a duplication of effort from our Shire staff. They add very little value to the decisions being made, because we have hope in the event we had a workshop, we would have had that two-way discussion between community expectations and executive already. And it's my opinion that the time and resources spent preparing an agenda briefing is better spent supporting a workshop environment where topics can be explored in an educational and open and free discussion, where options and outcomes are explored and reworked if needed. Throughout my career, particularly when working toward a cultural transformation, I have always been an advocate in saying to staff, is what I am doing adding value to this organisation? And if not, then manage upward and speak to your managers and request advice. And this is what's being asked of us now. What example are we setting for our Shire staff when we are encouraging them to work smarter while we continue to use resources in perhaps a mind-numbing duplication of their FTE hours spent preparing twice for our OCM? Thanks for listening to that. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to or for the motion? For or against, rather, the motion? Nope. Shall we put that to vote for recommendation 1? Right of reply for Councillor Shand.
I'd just like to point out that with some of the governmental changes that have been occurring, private councillor briefing sessions are not high on the to-do list. And I refer to a recent document that said that the Independent Commission Against Corruption has recommended that we prevent councils from holding private councillor briefing sessions. So I think we need to bear in mind that there are other things going on that we need to be aware of, and people that are actually, determining that this not occur.
Thank you, Councillor Shand.
May I do a point of order? Sorry, I do have to do this because...
Sorry, point of order?
A point of order, yeah, I do have to do it, and it was alerted to me. You're actually not allowed to introduce new information when you're speaking
The
for
right
it. You
reply?
can't introduce new information. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor.
My apologies.
I accept that. I accept the point of order. And I accept the apology. Thank you. Councillors, that brings us to the point where we put this to vote. All in favour of accepting Executive Recommendation 1, please show of hands. And those against? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. Oh, it's a tricky one. Moving on to item 9.2.4, making Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Waste Amendment Local Law 2024 for 2024. Would councillors... first of all, CEO, no comments? Okay. Would someone like to raise the motion? Councillor Davey. And second? Councillor Glover. Councillor Davey.
So with this one, I think it's largely an administrative tidy-up that's carried over from 2017. There were no community responses to it being advertised, so I don't think it's particularly contentious. I had similar comments at the last OCM relating to the other piece of legislation that's being tidied up. I don't have any specific comment on the content of the legislation, but more that I think the process should proceed to being finalised.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak against the motion? For? Okay. Right of reply, Councillor Davey. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Item 9.2.7. Approve the CEO... Oh, did you want to pop out? There's a chair out there for you. Item 9.2.7. Approve the CEO probationary performance review process. Appoint CEO performance reviewers and authorise the President to approve CEO leave applications. I think we've all discussed this, but we're open to questions if you want any before we put it to vote. Councillor Glover? Oh, you want to move the motion? Councillor Glover? Well, let's put the motion up first now that we've got a mover and a seconder. Councillor Glover?
I don't have anything further to add.
Councillor Shand? Councillor Davey, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wasn't able to attend this session, so I have a question about whether the performance reviewers, the 3 people nominated there, whether this is a subcommittee of a committee?
No. In all the attachments to the things that we looked at in our workshop, a reviewer has to be appointed rather than, it's ideally one person, but we've nominated these three. To have everybody reviewing your performance might be a bit overwhelming. And then the process then loops back to Councillor Davey. Are you speaking or asking questions?
I'm asking a question.
Okay.
So what is the value of having a performance review committee and 3 performance reviewers?
The value, it's not recommended to have 8 people or 9 people reviewing someone's performance face to face. So it's ideally 1 or 2 people. And in the interest of time, rather than have another committee workshop again or a committee meeting, we agreed at the last meeting to have President, Deputy President and Chair of the CEO committee. And that has to be agreed by our CEO as well, and he was in agreement with that. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Shall we put it to vote? Or, sorry, right of reply? Okay.
I no longer see the value of having a performance review committee and a smaller committee reviewing performance.
It's not a committee, it's the reviewer. Just to correct that, sorry.
Yeah, so the reviewers, being 3 of a smaller group of reviewers as well as a review committee doesn't seem to make much sense. And I am speaking against it because I see a number of inefficiencies in this process, including in the setting of performance review criteria. So that's why I'm speaking against the item.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Are you happy to put it to vote? Councillor Glover, right of reply?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And all those in favour? All those against? Thank you. That's carried. Just wait for the CEO to come back into the room. Thank you, CEO. Item 10, elected member motions of which previous notice has been given. We have none. Similarly, item 11, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting, which brings us to item 12, meeting closed to the public. Item 12.1 is matters for which the meeting may be closed. And we have 2 items there, 12.1.1 and 12.1.2. Would councillors like to move that we close the meeting to the public? Councillor Lindeman and seconded by Councillor Glover. All in favour? Carried. Thank you for your patience. We'll now read out the motions or the recommendations that were carried. Item 12.1.1, request for quote 335, Bridge 5224 emergency repair works. That Council 1 notes that the owners of lots 3195, 486 and 4223 support the following to resolve the Bridge 5224 matter. As 1.1, Bridge 5224 being the full responsibility of all property owners that requiring ongoing private access across Bridge 5224 at the conclusion of the detailed emergency works. 1.2, the Shire and Main Roads WA, MRWA, having no further responsibility to Bridge 5224 at the conclusion of the detailed emergency works, with the standard of the emergency repair works being undertaken to the satisfaction of the Shire and MRWA in accordance with the detailed design drawings that form part of RFQ 335. And at 1.3, no warranties from the Shire and or MRWA will be provided to landowners for the rectified bridge following the completion of the works. At 1.4, the applicable landowners being responsible for effecting and maintaining an appropriate ongoing public liability insurance for Bridge 5224. At 1.5, at the Shire's expense, a notification under Section 70A of the Transfer of Land Act 1893 shall be placed on individual certificates of title for applicable properties, outlining the ongoing landowner responsibilities for Bridge 5224. At 1.6, the applicable landowners being responsible for contributing $40,000, including GST, towards the undertaking of the works outlined in RFQ 335, with the contribution required to be paid to the Shire prior to the Shire awarding the works. At 1.7, the applicable owners being required to establish a deed of easement with the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage for their ongoing access rights through the Crown land on which Bridge 5224 is located. And at 1.8, the applicable landowners signing to a legal deed of settlement, release and indemnity, brackets deed or similar, prepared at the Shire's expense and executed to the satisfaction of the Shire of Donnybrook Bailingup's Chief Executive Officer and MRWA, that is reflective of the above and other requirements of this resolution prior to RFQ 335 being awarded and commenced. At point 2, request the Chief Executive Officer to obtain legal services to prepare the deed outlined in 1.8 and have all parties to the document sign, ensuring full execution prior to awarding the works to the recommended contractor for RFQ 335, noting these costs will be charged to existing Shire account 108920 legal expenses. At 3, the Chief Executive Officer to obtain written confirmation from MRWA that they will fund $154,650 ex-GST towards the cost of the emergency repair works of Bridge 5224. This confirmation is required to be received prior to awarding the works of RFQ 335. Subject to 2 and 3 being resolved to the satisfaction of the Chief Executive Officer, request the applicable landowners responsible for contributing $40,000, including GST, towards the undertaking of the works of RFQ 335 to make payment. RFQ 335 is not to be awarded or commenced until this contribution is received in full by the Shire. At item 5, subject to point 4 being satisfied, amends the 2024-25 Shire of Donnybrook Bailingeup budget as follows. The CEO or Job Code 134500, description maintenance bridges, has a current budget allocation of $199,560, with external funding to increase this to $191,014, with own source funding increase of $29,141 to bring a proposed amended budget allocation of $419,715. At item 6, request the Chief Executive Officer to allocate the required own source funding of $29,141 from the Shire's Roadworks Reserve. At item 7, subject to all of the above being resolved to the Chief Executive Officer's satisfaction, award the contract for RFQ 335, Bridge 5224 Emergency Repair Works to Jonah Construction Proprietary Limited in accordance with their submitted offer. At the completion of all works required by RFQ 335, requests the Chief Executive Officer to ensure all Shire requirements of the deed, referred to in point 1.8, have been executed to his satisfaction and have Bridge 5224 identified as a privately owned asset in Shire records with reference to the deed. At item 9, at the completion of all works required by RFQ 335, requests the Chief Executive Officer to have MRWA confirm in written correspondence that they acknowledge that Bridge 5224 is a privately owned bridge. And I think that brings that one to an end. At item 12.1.2, Council resolved for RFT 072425 Irish Town Bridge Road 3616 that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to award the contract for the separable portion 1, emergency repairs only, component of RFT 072425 Bridge 3616 Irish Town Road, emergency repairs and maintenance to Jonah Construction Proprietary Limited for $497,749.41 ex-GST, and item 2 approves unbudgeted expenditure for a further $497,749.41 ex-GST, noting that an insurance claim for the reimbursement of these costs is pending. And at item 3, requests the Chief Executive Officer to advise Jonah Construction Proprietary Limited that separable portion 2 will not be awarded as part of this contract. At item 4, requests the Chief Executive Officer to further consult with Main Roads Western Australia with regards to the timing and funding of separable portion 2 for preventative, routine and specific maintenance only, component of RFT 072425 Bridge 3616 Irish Town Road, emergency repairs and maintenance. Which brings us to item 13, closure. And I declare this meeting, first of all, we'll say that the next agenda briefing session will be held on the 19th of February 2025 at 5 p.m. You may have January off in the Shire of Donnybrook Council Chamber. And I declare the meeting closed at 7:24 p.m.